Yeah, so this is the recording for, kind of like the tournament review, EAFF-E1 for both the men and women from the Japan perspective. All right, so yeah, you've sent me the question. So what I'll do is I'll just give you kind of a review of both tournaments from what I saw. As you know, I was working at the Kashima Stadium, which mostly saw the women's games, right? So that's more where I can have a bit more input, but I will go over the men's as well. All right, so let's start with the men. So just in general, yeah, so over 3 games, right? So the first one against Hong Kong was kind of like not too much disrespect to Hong Kong, but the standard was clearly, a big gap. So it's not too surprising that the score ended as high as it was. But all the same, there was a few positives from Japan there. I mean, they played very well. They put the ball together quite well, and even though it was a team of kind of players who hadn't played together much before, they seemed to kind of work together well. So yeah, whatever, kind of like a well done. The second game I didn't really see too much of, but I know that they struggled against China. So I think that kind of had a few people a little bit concerned. Maybe Moriyasu was kind of experimenting a little bit. A few new players had come in, and ultimately they couldn't get the goal to win the game. So they take from that what they will. And then finally, against South Korea was probably the best performance, where they were, quite convincingly winners, right? And I think the last time that those two played in Japan, Korea won 4-1, was it? So Japan kind of got that one and then probably were, deservedly won the trophy. In terms of the players, standout players, there weren't really too many, I don't think. There was a few. So Yuki Soma got the player of the tournament. Was it the MVP or the Golden Boot? I forget which, but he was kind of like, the standout player. He's quite good at league level. He's also quite good for Nagoya Grampus. But the problem with him is he's not very consistent. He can be very kind of like high intensity, running up and down the pitch, very creative one game, and then he doesn't do it for like another couple of games. So I think that's the kind of problem with him. This tournament, he really came through a little bit, but in terms of having a permanent place in the Japan team, I don't think he's going to get past some of the competition that he has, the players based in Europe, right? So some of these guys at Celtic, like Furuhashi or Daisen Maeda, these kind of guys. I don't think he's going to be getting ahead of any of the Korea. Kubo as well, who is in Spain, right, at Real Sociedad. I don't think he's going to be able to compete there. Other than that, we had who was there? Nishimura of Yokohama F Marinos. He had a standout tournament, and I think the other guy, the defender Koike as well, quite versatile defender. He also did okay, and I think those two have a bit of a better chance of landing a place in the Japan side for the World Cup, purely because they are quite versatile. They were quite good in this tournament. If anything else, if anything, then perhaps they could be some good backup going into Qatar 2022. So who knows? All in all, I think it was a good kind of like run out for the players. It was kind of a good little practice tournament, I think, for Moriyasu to try a few things. And the icing on the cake is, of course, the trophies. So we can't really take too much. We expect that when these, in a real tournament where the European-based players will play, that they will come over and they will take up most of the spots in the first team. So we don't know how many of these new players we'll see, these new faces we'll see in the World Cup. Probably not many, right? So all in all, a good exercise, but not so much to take away looking ahead to the World Cup. All right, on to the women then. So it was kind of, for Japan, it was a little bit of a similar kind of approach. The players were almost entirely domestic based. So it was a chance to kind of see some of the newer players, some of the kind of fringe players, see what they can do, see if there's anybody who the head coach Ikeda is, hasn't really had a look at yet, see if there's anybody who we could think about bringing into the first team, as he is also looking ahead to the Women's World Cup next year. So generally, it was great. It was a good, I thought, the first game was, it was a little bit fragmented. The passing wasn't great. The players were, of course, it was very obvious that they weren't used to playing together with each other. But I thought that, they started quite well, quite positively. And despite a few of the mistakes and whatnot, they were still able to kind of really kind of figure things out and get a lot of, combinations, attacking combinations, passing combinations put together quite well. And then, yeah, I think they really kind of had Korea on the back foot for a fair bit of the game, and they managed to get a couple of goals, right? Well, scored one, conceded one, and then got the winner. They also did very well in defence, I thought, although it looked a bit risky. And the goal, the Ji So-yun's goal was of course a very good strike, and the defending was not very good there. The organisation was not very good, but for the most part, they were able to kind of like just kind of hold back and stop Korea from creating any kind of quality chance. This is why they took a lot more shots, because Korea could not like really find a way through, and were kind of forced to take a lot of shots. So I think Japan, in a very kind of like dogged, kind of rough way, that they did manage to hold on quite well. So I thought a game where these players have kind of only just started playing together, and they're playing a very new system, and a lot of experimenting as well. Ikeda was changing the positions throughout the match, so it wasn't just new players; it was new people playing in different positions. So very kind of hard to get any cohesion and organization together. But somehow they managed to get the win from that game. So I thought that was kind of one good takeaway. The second game, of course, against Chinese Taipei. Yeah, again, the Nadeshiko are kind of a little bit higher level, right? So we do expect them to win comfortably. Although they did score first, Chinese Taipei. Bit of a defensive error there. So, of course, the defense has not kind of worked itself out. There was no organized. We didn't have the main experienced players like Saki Kumagai or Minami, who has just gone to Roma, right? So it was kind of like newer, a little bit fresher, a little bit younger kind of defenders like Hana Takahashi from Urawa Reds, right? She was leading the line. I think she stepped into a little bit more of a senior role. So again, a little bit more game time, and things should look a little bit more organized. But yeah, again, that one was quite a good game. And then the final game against China, it was a bit Japan dominated, right? So we kind of like it was good to watch for a Japan fan. It looked, though, the finishing wasn't really there, so it was a bit hard to kind of. That was the one kind of negative, I thought. The clinicism just has to be better for Japan. Although they did manage to keep the ball well and kind of find ways of creating chances and really pin China back into their defensive third. So that part of it was good. It was just the fact that they couldn't really finish off any of the chances was quite concerning. So in the World Cup, they're going to have to be much better at doing that. Otherwise, they won't get very far, of course. Yeah, in sum, I thought it was kind of an okay game. I was a bit worried that China might come back and score to win the tournament, right? If they came back and got a winner late in the game. It didn't look like it was happening, but China always have that about them. They did it against Korea in the previous game to kind of stay within a chance of winning the tournament in the final game. But yeah, I think mainly I think Japan kind of had it like all kind of sealed off, and you could tell that they were going to go out and see the game, at least at the draw, the 0-0, which is the way it ended. They'd be able to do that at least. So yeah, so it's kind of similar to the men's. It's a very good kind of testing run out, a good chance to get a lot of tournament experience into some of the newer players, some of the fresher young players. But how many of them we'll see when the European or NWSL based players are going to be in the tournament and ready for selection, we don't know. It's probably not going to be many. But I think the ones that we can look at, probably the defender I mentioned, Hana Takahashi. She is like becoming like a regular feature of the national team, no matter what the tournament is, even if she's just a backup, a centre back backup, right? So that's probably where she will come in at the World Cup. Me personally, I like Hinata Miyazawa up front. She plays for My Navi Sendai. Very creative, very ferocious, very good dribbling skills, and she can cross and take a shot. Very well-rounded attacking player. Usually plays on the left wing, but maybe she can play, maybe centrally through the middle. Who knows? Who else? So Hikaru Naomoto, who is not a new player to the squad at all. I think she's about 28, 29 years old. Urawa Reds forward, has played in Germany before. She was really good. Again, main weapon is the set pieces, and she can also play in like a number 10 role as the very forward attacking midfielder, playing off the number 9 who might play with back to goal and bring her in sometimes. So yeah, she has quite a few skills in her repertoire. Yeah, and then of course the player of the tournament was Risa Shimizu, which is no surprise. She is one of the best teams in this Nadeshiko squad. She could easily get a club in Europe or in North America, but it seems as though she's decided to keep playing with Tokyo Verdy Blazer here in the WE League. So yeah, she's doing good things here, but she is a very, very high quality right wing back, in both in attacking and when defending. She has a very good sense of the game, great technique, great dribbling skills, and seems to have a lot of good natural fitness. Yeah, and can kind of really come back and cover when needed, when the defense is a little bit fragmented or whatever. She has a really good understanding of the defensive duties as well as the attacking contributions as well. So that was all good to see. So yeah, so that kind of wraps it up, basically. You asked my opinion on the China women's team. So yeah, it was a bit disappointing, I thought. I'd like to have seen a little bit more from them. I thought they didn't really get going in pretty much any of the games, but they did against Korea. They did do what they do well, which is really kind of hang on and stay in games and maybe kind of nick a goal on the counter. Right, we saw that a little bit in the Asian Cup final, and we definitely saw it in the South Korea game. And in Japan, I always thought it might happen. It might happen at 0-0 if they get that counter-attacking chance. They might just get through and nick a goal on the counter, which would be devastating for Japan. But it would be kind of like a very typical win for the way the Steel Roses play. Players, I thought, there was of course the usuals who are always looking dangerous. So Wang Shuang or Wang Shanshan. I apologize if my pronunciation is off there. The player that you mentioned, you recommended, the youngster who's gone to Grasshoppers, Zhang Linyan, is it? We didn't really get to see much. I know that she scored the goal in the opener, which I didn't get to see. I was not Nagoya Stadium for that, Toyota Stadium for that, but yeah, and the other game, it seems like so against South Korea that they kind of had marked out the game a little bit, so we didn't really get to see much of her there. And then she came on as a substitute against Japan, so it could have been a situation where she would have been the one to go on and score. But yeah, we didn't really get to see so much in this tournament, although she did have a very good tournament at the Asian Cup, which is slightly more important, right? Yeah, and then other than that, it was kind of hard to really pick anyone standout from my point of view. But collectively, they kind of did fairly well, did what they do best, did it quite well. That kind of steeliness, like I said, staying organized and hanging on in games, even when they're quite outmatched like they were against Japan. It was still 0-0, right? So you might argue that early on in the tournament, if they had got that a 0-0 against Japan, that would have been a good result for them, and things might have gone a bit differently, but yeah. Anyway, that's about it. So thanks so much. Yeah, I hope this helps, and yeah, hope to connect with you at the next tournament. Cheers. Bye.